Welcome everyone to the May 9th, 2021 service of the North Texas Church of Freethought. We're going to call this presentation By Any Other Name. That's a reference to the Shakespeare A Rose by Any Other Name. But really what this has to do with is communicating our message and doing so in a way that is effective and useful and especially not harmful. We want to be clear about what it is we're about, even though any religion would take a lot of explanation. We've never shied away from the term atheism or denied that we can be thought of as an atheist church. Not believing in the actual existence of deities, after all, especially the deities of our Bronze Age ancestors and the supposed revelations from them, is a good thing. But over the 26 years since we began holding services, we have hardly just said over and over again that we don't believe in God. That would get pretty boring. And Freethought is a lot more than that, which is why we don't title ourselves as here the Church of Atheism. There are a lot of other things we don't believe in. We don't believe in prayer. We don't believe in angels and demons. We don't believe in heaven and hell. We don't believe in sacraments or sacrifices. We don't believe in karma or reincarnation or any kind of afterlife. And those are just religion-connected superstitions. We also don't believe in a lot of other things that are supernatural, irrational, counterfactual, or otherwise absurd, although we are interested in these things to the extent that they do tell us something about human nature, and it is very important to understand when something is wrong, why it's wrong. Meanwhile, none of the other churches call themselves by what they don't believe in. None of the other churches even call themselves by what they admittedly, vigorously, and quite openly oppose, such as eating pork, or maybe any meat at all, birth control, not believing in that, or being opposed to abortion, or being against wedding cake for gay people. And this is understandable. Why should Christians or Muslims go under the banner of reincarnationism, just because they don't believe in reincarnation? Not only does it focus attention on a doctrine they reject, that of reincarnation, but it would suggest that religion is all about that doctrine. Well, in the same way, and for the same reasons, Hindus and Muslims do not brand themselves as rejecting substitutionary atonement. That's this Christian idea that if you're convicted of a crime, the judge can get down off the bench and take your punishment for you, and somehow that's good. So while we freethinkers are atheists, it may not be a good idea for us to, as they say these days, identify as atheists. Many of us are used to identifying ourselves as atheists. Many of us see enough wrong with Godism to be comfortable with and even proud of being atheists. But it sends the message of and puts us on the side of agreeing with the central ideology of the Godists that religion is only and all about their God. Do we really want to send the message and endorse that idea? Why should we play that game? When people say they are atheists, the message received is usually not what is intended or what we intend. What believers tend to hear is that we are religious nothings, or we have nothing positive, constructive, or enlightening to contribute on the subject of religion. And worse, they hear, we are nothing at all like you, or even, we hate you and your stupid religion. There are a number of alternatives. Each of these labels has its attractions, even eupraxiphy on the lower right there. That was American philosopher Paul Kurtz's term, which is put together prax ophi, like in philosophy, the idea of good practice through wisdom. But there are drawbacks with each one of these. You have the accessibility problem, obviously, with eupraxiphy, and some of these other terms mean the same as atheism, or they have pre-existing associations that we don't really necessarily care to reinforce. Here's another alternative. Although no one should be enslaved to dictionaries, the word freethought has been in use since the early 18th century. It has a nice definition that's very much to the point for honest and consistent atheists. At dictionary.com, it's this, that thought unrestrained by deference to authority, tradition, or established belief, especially in matters of religion. And I put in brackets there, opinions held without regard, because some other dictionaries have it that way, opinions held without regard to authority, tradition, or established belief. Of course, it's unfortunate that the word thought has to be modified in this way with the adjective free. Real thinking is, by its very nature, unrestrained. But of course, very often thought is so circumscribed, especially in matters of religion, by the alleged virtue and ideal of faith. And of course, we don't think that faith is a virtue or an ideal at all. But this is a legacy and a result and a symptom of the deference to authority, tradition, and established belief, especially in matters of religion, that is so prevalent. And of course, we all know where that comes from. This is the larger and heavier burden of supernaturalist religions that is so taken for granted. The idea that matters of religion are exclusively supernatural and consist of dogmatic beliefs supported by religious authorities, supposedly having their source in divine revelation. But if there is any thinking about matters of religion to be done, it must be free thinking. It must involve serious questioning, doubt, and a willingness to abandon any belief, any idea, especially when a better one is to be had. And very often the better idea is simply, we don't know. It is better not to know than to be sure of what is wrong. And this is really what distinguishes, and what we really ought to realize distinguishes theism from atheism. Here, for example, is a thought that all of us would agree with, that everyone is free to embrace and profess that religion, those religious opinions, which, guided by the light of reason, he shall consider true. Sounds like something that Thomas Jefferson or Ethan Allen might have said. Sounds like it might have been part of an opinion of a Supreme Court state-church separation case. But no. This was pronounced error and anathema by Pope Pius IX. And this Pope Pius IX put this forth not in medieval times, but in 1864. And Martin Luther, the founder of Lutheranism, and of course the guy who gets credited with the whole Reformation, he had similar opinions. Here he is saying that reason must be diluted, blinded, and destroyed. You have to tear the eyes out of reason if you really want to be a Christian, he said. Obviously, when the subject of religion comes up in everyday life, usually in casual conversation, there's not the opportunity to say very much. The less said, the better, is most of us, the opinion of most of us. Most believers have the advantage only because everyone supposes they know what Christians or Jews or Muslims and even what Mormons and Scientologists are. But it is easier for a freethinker to very simply and succinctly convey their view, if asked, than you might think. And one can do so in a way that is not offensive or off-putting, and that might just have a useful effect. So, for example, one could quote Thomas Paine, who said, "My religion is to do good." What could be simpler than that? Somebody asks your religion. Somebody asks what church you go to. My own mind is my own church. When they look at you funny, you say, "Oh, I'm just quoting Thomas Paine." You're not making it up off the top of your head. Thomas Paine also fleshed it out a little bit here. He said, "I believe in the equality of man and that religious duties consist in doing justice, loving mercy, and endeavoring to make our fellow creatures happy." Very simple and straightforward. What a genius Thomas Paine was. And of course, feel free to replace man with humanity and bring it up to date, that particular quote. Or how about this? My suggestions. Free thought is not to believe in things, but to think about things. Say it straight out. Belief is not where it's at. How about, I don't think any sense can be made of the supernatural. Lots of ways to say that. I just don't think I can accept the supernatural. And also to point out, freethinkers would rather not know. We're okay with not knowing than being sure of what's not so. And one cannot go wrong quoting American physicist and Nobel Prize winner Richard Feynman. One could easily restate this also to suit your own taste, the basic idea being that one can be quite happy knowing what there is to know while not knowing the answers to every question we might think of. And it might be added that there is more than enough satisfaction in this one life that we know, and that to get to the end of knowing, we did not totally waste it. In other words, you get to the end of your life, you no longer figure things out. It's nice to be able to look back and feel like you didn't waste your life. That would be much worse than thinking you're bound for hell, I think. These sorts of responses to the question of what religion are you or what church do you go to have the advantage of leaving more to be said. Simply saying, I'm an atheist, tends to go nowhere. And if someone is truly interested in what you think of free will or morality, or why not having a hope for eternity does not fill you with despair, subjects we've talked about many times in the NTCOF, I know that you will find the words to explain it. You might give someone cause to think, which is good for them, and really anybody thinking is good for everyone. When we share something of ourselves, not pushing it on others with threats of hellfire if they don't accept it, of course, but when we share something of ourselves, we can give something without losing it. And we've shown this before, and it is worth thinking about again, that we do what all the other churches do, but without God. But in doing so, we do what no other churches do. We insist that you question, doubt, learn, grow, and seek understanding more than belief. We don't require or even suggest that you think anything that we say, or even that you think yourself, is infallible. That you should concern yourself with what matters and not with what does not matter. And that would go even with things you read in the newspaper. Happening on the other side of the world, oh, that's interesting, and you kind of put it in your brain that you read this, and maybe that's what happened, and maybe the news story is not quite right, but it doesn't matter for your everyday life. Focus on what really matters to you. As Voltaire put it, tend your garden, meaning pay attention to the things that you have control over. Pursue the good for the love of the good, not for fear of punishment or hope of reward. Those who do good only because they're afraid of punishment or hoping for a reward are subrogating, diminishing the value of morality, turning it into a means to an end instead of the end in itself that it ought to be. And the same with our treatment of other people. We ought to treat other people as ends in themselves, which they are, not as simple means to our ends, although frequently, especially in a commercial world, that's a part of how we treat other people. Most of all, make the most of this life. It's the only one we know of for sure. If there's another one, hey, great, you can deal with that when you get to it. Our principles are to reason, to enjoy, to appreciate, and to love. And fleshed it out in a few words for each of those, making sense of things, to try to figure things out. We love to have that eureka, wow, I figured this out again, over and over as we go through life. We want to pursue happiness. That's right in the Declaration of Independence. We want to discover the good, and most of all, explore meaning and purpose, because that is what we love. Others, our relationships with others, and all the things that are worth appreciating and loving. A couple things that happened on May 2nd, not as many things as we've had in the past, but in 1945 at this time of year, World War II was ending. Victory in Europe Day, I believe, was celebrated May 7th. May 8th, though, the Germans signed a surrender type document in Berlin at the Soviet embassy, and many countries over in Europe celebrate May 9th as the end of World War II. So it all took time. The Channel Islands were liberated last, I believe, and it's quite an interesting story, as with so many things, and should make us realize that when things begin and end, it's not always one thunderclap, one moment in time. It takes time for things to begin and end, whether that's life, your life, or almost anything. Also, very important thing, in 1960, the Food and Drug Administration approved the company Cyril's drug called EMBODIED. That was the first birth control pill. And what a change it's made all over the world to have effective contraception. Literally has liberated women and changed their standing in the world. And that's something to be thankful for and to think about on this May 2nd. And I'm sorry, I'm saying May 2nd, I should say May 9th. May 9th is when these things happened. Okay, so as we move to discussion, let's remember that politics can sometimes destroy our civility, and we don't want to let that happen. We want to have respect for each other, maybe withhold comments that we might otherwise make if we really realize we want to learn more than we want to bludgeon our own beliefs on people. Sit back, enjoy, and see what other people have to say, and think about ways to express your opinion without being argumentative. Incivility hurts everyone, and especially those who engage in it. One thing that they teach in schools for salesmanship is third-party selling. Instead of saying, well, I think this and that, another way to approach it is to say, there are people that say this and that. That way you get a reaction without kind of putting your own skin in the game or making people think that if they disagree, that they're disagreeing with you. Because what are we really interested in anyways is the views and opinions. It's not a personal battle and should never be a matter of winning and losing for ourselves personally. Remember, too, that we are embodied minds. We say this again and again. Our body language, our tone of voice, our posture, our physical behavior reflects where we're at emotionally. And if we're going to control our emotions, we need to take note of those clues. And then some final housekeeping kinds of issues. Remember that Freethought is not free. Please donate to our church at churchoffreethought.org. There's a PayPal button that you can click and very easily contribute using your bank account, credit card, whichever you prefer. We depend on your continued support, and thank you very much, both for your participation in our activities and for your financial support. Visit us on Facebook and Twitter. Things going on there, and you can add to what's going on. It's not a high traffic. It's not going to suck up all your time, and we don't want to do that. But do go ahead and sign up. We do depend on your continued support, and this is part of it. Help us promote your values. If these are your values, and I believe they are, support them by supporting the NTCOF. We can do together what none of us can do on our own, and remember, we have special discounts on tithing. You don't have to tithe the full 10% that other churches demand. You give you a 20% discount to only have to tithe 8%. That's now I can turn off the sarcasm font. Join with us in promoting facts and reason and celebrating doubt. Be a part of us and what we're doing, and help us do what we're doing. Please contact us, comment below, and also subscribe to our channel so that you'll find out when we upload new videos. Demonstrate your commitment. Be the future that you wish to see. If you want the world to be better, contribute to being better. Lots of ways to do so, and we've talked about a number of them this morning. So thank you very much and good morning. And we'll see you at the discussion and next week as well. We'll see what we'll talk about next week. I hope it'll be fun, and I have some things in mind. We'll see. Thank you. On to question and answer and discussion.